Hello and welcome to the Throw-In Hurling show with me, Michael Verney, and delighted to be joined once again by Eddie Brennan and John Malone as we look ahead to a mouth-watering All-Ireland final. And seeing as it's All-Ireland final week, we have a special guest on our hands as well. Delighted to have Sunday Independent columnist Jamesie O'Connor with us as well. Jamesie, how are you?
Good, Michael. Yeah.
Unfortunately, the three of us are not, we're not privy to what's going on inside the county preparing for an All-Ireland final this week. You are. What's it like down in Clare? We have a fair idea what it's like down in Cork. We're hearing about all the hype. What's it like in Clare this week?
Yeah, nice mood, atmosphere around the county. The flag sellers are in town. There's fellas selling hats and scarves and headbands and flags and the various paraphernalia at different spots around the county. You're seeing some fella sitting at a table or whatever. You're saying, well, business looks slack enough, but I'm sure it'll pick up as the week goes on. Like Willie Clancy was on in Milltown last weekend. Place was packed. The weather picked up a bit. The Hinch has been busy, but there's just, I think, people are really looking forward to it, and you get the sense that the hype is gradually building, the excitement is building. Bit of trouble with tickets this weekend in the county, bit of hassle that didn't go according to the plan, but hopefully it's sorted now. And I think we're just really looking forward to getting a crack at Cork and getting to Croker.
Well, you definitely don't want to be outnumbered by them anyway, so hopefully that's all sorted before Sunday. Lads, just before we get to the game, You're some of the lucky few that have played in All-Ireland finals. Like, Eddie, I'll throw it to you first. What's it like as a player? What's the week of an All-Ireland final like? What was your routine like? Did you mingle amongst the people? Did you keep to yourself? Or what was your kind of preparation like? Yeah, you played in plenty of them, so I'm sure you got to fine-tune it as you went along.
Yeah, we were lucky in that regard, Michael. I suppose from 06 through to 11, I was able to work at Electric Picnic on the Saturday. So it was grand. I suppose you kind of have to go there and make your mistakes and then find your routines. And like I said, we were fierce lucky to have been there a few times, and you were able to, like you said there, fine tune it, find your algorithm or your what works for you. So it was grand in that. I liked being busy. I always liked to kind of one or two bad experiences where you kind of did very little in the lead up to the All-Irelands. Even when playing golf on the Friday or the Thursday before an All-Ireland. And it's not that in itself made you not play well or anything like that. It was just you were idle. And I just found I rather being busy. I liked I was outside the county as well, which also helped. I was working in Portlaoise. I was working in Dublin in the early years. You were kind of a little bit detached from it all. And the only, I suppose, bit of grief that I had from time to time was just dealing with Mammy at home, and the allocation of tickets was obviously, you try to remove that. And Brian was very strong with that as we got into the teeth of, we'll say, 06, 07. That was the one warning he would give us like that. And I probably organised up the county board that a fortnight out, the tickets were shut down and we got focused in. Because that's all that matters for you. For everybody else, they can enjoy the Erasmus has. And I suppose it's finding what works for you. If you're happy to kind of chat with people a little bit and kind of manage that. But I was just a stickler for my routine that worked for me. And, it wasn't that you were superstitious about it. It just made you feel ready. And and sometimes you do have to have a bad All-Ireland or two to get that. And sometimes you don't. I don't say that lightly because we were very, very fortunate. Some people don't. You get one crack at it and you have to try to get it right. And in counties where there's huge hype, that can be tricky, especially if you're working local, because it's all consuming. So I suppose it depends yourself what way you want to approach it. If you want to, you just can't get lost in the hype either. You still have to kind of keep grounded. But it is definitely something to be enjoyed too. Like, I enjoyed that build-up. I enjoyed what we used to do. I suppose particularly in the group. That week we train on a Tuesday, train on a Friday night. You knew what you were going to be doing those training sessions. And at that stage, it was just all systems go. And it was just couldn't wait for Sunday morning to roll around, because this was what it was all about, enjoying the bus journey. And for me, I loved the bus journey because I was in the second row at the back with myself and Michael Rice just to sit together. And there was great crack on the bus, which really helped as well.
What was the crack at Electric Picnic? What are we looking at? Like chin putty, sunglasses, a hat, all sorts of disguises? Or are we just rocking around as normal?
Yeah, a little bit of that. I had wellies. The Bermuda shorts, the old bucket hat, and the big sunglasses. Yeah. No, I was like, what I was working at was we used to be involved just around the entrance areas and things like that, and we were in plain clothes, so it was grand. And I used to have my little lunchbox of kind of pasta and chicken the day before. Now, the good wallop of it in it, I like my food, so I'd say I definitely had about 4 runs at that bowl of pasta during the day. But it was grand. You're able to just switch off and do a few little bits and just not be immersed in the whole thing. And it was distracting. Like it was just, like I said, I liked being busy. I like having my mind occupied, and that you weren't overly hyped. You could kind of go about your life as normal. And then every so often, your mind would wander to the match and go, okay, what's going to happen if this happens, if that happens? And I'm looking forward to this aspect of it. But it was grand. You kind of just do whatever 7-8 hours on a Saturday then, and just you got into your routine. Like I said, I had the whole thing timed down nicely, which was a brilliant way to be going into it. It definitely helped. But like I said, there, everyone is different. Some lads would prefer to probably, just be very idle maybe, or just, I suppose, whatever works for you. Some lads, I know 2 or 3 of our lads used to like to go off down to Waterford and follow a bit of horse racing on the Saturday afternoon. And that was just their way of, getting ready and switching off.
Yeah, some people definitely don't like to think too much coming up to a big game. I find if you're idle or have free time, you think too much and it just kind of flows in and the game arrives if you don't get time to think about it too much. But Mull, you were writing in the Irish Independent on Saturday about the build-up to the 08 final and how it maybe, in hindsight, wasn't the most ideal preparation. Can you just tell our listeners and viewers about that?
Yeah, well, look, Eddie touched on it there. Some counties, have the luxury of getting back to numerous All-Irelands. But I suppose like a county like Waterford, when you're kind of in a cycle of maybe 5-6 years where you have an opportunity of getting to an All-Ireland final, our probably cycle was between 0-2 and 0-8, probably in a 5-6 year cycle. And I suppose when we did get to the All-Ireland in 0-8, it was possibly the wrong year where we got to the All-Ireland, where, it was the last throw of the dice. Not all the, great players were probably coming to the latter stages of their career. And probably what would have really bode well for us going forward is if we got to an All-Ireland final even early on in the cycle. And I think even if we would have experienced losing, even if we did come up short and we lost an All-Ireland final, it would have stood us in good stead going forward of possibly getting back to an All-Ireland. And if we did get back to an All-Ireland, well then, as Eddie touched on there, you could take the learnings from where things went wrong. And in our case, Eddie touched on, we got lost in the hype. It was our one only opportunity of getting to the All-Ireland, and most certainly, the way things escalated in the 3 weeks, the build up to it, having 2 open nights, getting caught up in tickets, trying to avoid people, trying to stay well grounded, trying to stay away from the hype. We got sucked into that, and hence why we possibly underperformed on the day. Now, that's not taken away that, look, we were also coming up against probably one of the greatest teams of all time, and possibly one of the greatest teams of all time that were at their peak and hit their peak on All-Ireland finally, unfortunately for us. And I think that's what these Cork players and Clare players have got to be mindful going into this week, not to get fucking stuck, get really stuck in all that hype and the ticket fiasco. And I can only imagine, even from a Cork point of view, like it's, the euphoria down there after the match, and tickets, the demand is exceeding supply, and I think the Cork management are going to have to probably step in, and as Eddie touched on, Brian Cody, took that away from the players. I think the players can't get stuck, get engrossed in any of that, and their minds just totally has to be focused on Sunday, 3:30 Sunday, and the ball. I think also Eddie touched on there, being busy on a Saturday. I'm sure Eddie, no doubt, probably slept like a log that Saturday night after being out at an electric picnic. That can be difficult as well. I don't know what Clare are doing. Are they going up the night before? We went up the night before. We stayed out in Ashbourne. That can be difficult as well. Trying to feel comfortable in a hotel setting. Personally, myself, I would rather be home in my own bed. I think Cork, they went up. They're after doing a run of it. So I think what will stand in Cork's favour is that, I think they're going to stay in the Burlington Hotel. That went well from the last day. I think what will really help Cork going into this match, they have the experience now of playing in front of a full house in Croke Park. So like what Cork experienced the last day was nearly like an All-Ireland final feel to it. I think that's really going to benefit Cork going into this match. What will also benefit Clare going into this match is the fact that the likes of some of their elder statesmen have an All-Ireland medal in their back pocket. So they've played in All-Ireland before, they've won an All-Ireland, so they're not going to bring that pressure into an All-Ireland final, whereas the likes of ourselves, possibly Ken McGrath, Paul Flynn, Dan Shannon, you're saying, Jesus, we need to go and win it now. We might be back here again. And you can put that element of extra pressure on top of yourself. And I think, the likes of Hoggy, Harnedy, they might be looking at this and saying, Jesus, lads, this is our opportunity of we need to go and grasp this, win this, because have no doubt Limerick will be back next year. And who's to say Cork or Clare might be back next year. Was young lads go into it, they're an awful lot freer. They're like, I'm sure the likes of Joyce, Hayes, Conley, they're going into it freer, knowing that, right, lads, we've another 6-7 years left in our career, possibly 8 years. The likelihood is we're going to possibly play in another 2 or 3 All-Irelands, given the landscape of where other counties are presently right now. So yeah, it can be different for both elder statesmen, the lads who are in the middle ground, the 20 lads who are 24, 25, and then the younger lads. You always find with the younger lads that, they nearly perform better on All-Ireland final day than some of the elder statesmen who probably put more pressure on themselves,
Jamesie, just quickly, your first 2 All-Ireland finals, 95, 97, varying fortunes, I would say, for yourself. You're probably quieter the first day of 95, you're unbelievable the second day. I'm just wondering, even in your prep for those 2 games, did you do anything different for 97 that you maybe didn't do in 95?
Not really, Michael. I mean, again, you're just trying to, I suppose, stay in your routine and, try to keep things as normal as possible. I mean, but I was teaching, so I was off for the summer. And, but I mean, the other big difference thing between then and now is like the 2 weeks is very, very little time. We probably had 3 or 4 weeks lads before the finals. So the hype was building, and you had more time to deal with the tickets and the banquets and the suits and all the other stuff that has to be done. So there's been real pressure on, I'd say, the county boards and the management teams in both counties trying to get the press night boxed off, trying to get the suits, the banquet tickets and the tickets, and that stuff isn't straightforward, and at the same time it has to be done. But like for us, Michael, like we flew up, which was brilliant because you slept in your own bed the night before. You rocked down to Shannon. It was straight onto the tarmac, straight onto the plane. You got off the tarmac and the other side into a bus, and you were at the hotel. And the whole thing took about an hour. You know what I mean? So the flight was only 30 minutes. So that's something I think the Clare lads again are sleeping in their own beds on Saturday night, heading up early on Sunday morning. And the fact I think as well, look at that Brian, that Brian Lohan was there, as a player, I think, is a help because he's been in the player's shoes and he knows what all the sideshows and the distractions. And so I think that's certainly, and the fact, as John said earlier, that look at Tony, Dave McInerney, John Conlon, Shane, they were there in 2013. They know what it's about. And that has to be a help, having some experience of that in the camp.
We'll just get into the nuts and bolts of the game, lads. Jamesie, I'll stay with you for a second. There's plenty of probably hype around Cork just because they, halted the drive for 5 the last day. I'd say they've peaked twice in this year's championship already, probably the 2 Limerick games. Do you think that they can peak again? Do they need to peak again to get over the line even against Clare? Or is it a 90-95% of what they produced the last day?
It's hard to say, Michael. I mean, I go back to the Cork Clare game in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, you know, on the 28th of April. And obviously, look at Clare had lost to Limerick in really disappointing circumstances. Cork had, you know, flopped against Waterford. And that was a massive game. The gun was to both teams' heads that day. And you know, my sense, you know, in Páirc Uí Chaoimh that day was that this was a really quality match, that this was played at a serious pace. There was massive energy expended by both sets of players, huge amount of running done off the ball. And I met a Cork supporter on the way out, and sure, look at, he was gutted or whatever. And I said to him, look at, if you get to that same level against Limerick, I give you, you know, a chance, because I just thought the match was of a really high standard. So, look at, arguably Clare haven't played as well since. You know, they were good against Waterford in patches, but shouldn't have been in the position they were probably in. They again got it done against Tip without shooting the lights out. Obviously didn't perform the Munster final. The sending off maybe changed things in the Wexford match, and obviously we were shocking in the first half against Kilkenny. So Clare arguably haven't played as well, I would say, in the championship since that Cork game, when a lot of Clare did a lot of good things and played really well. A lot of the guys really performed that day.
But they had to, didn't they, Jamesie? They were under pressure. They went down a nice bit against Cork that day.
Oh, massive. I mean, you know, Mark Rogers was brilliant that day. Peter Duggan was awesome, man of the match. And as I said, like in Cork, you go back through it, like Cork played well that day. You know, and the sending off, arguably, you know, was a huge turning point in the game, because, you know, obviously I'd say the plan was to, you know, try to run the Clare boys ragged at the back, you know, side to side, and then bring on obviously Robbie O'Flynn and Shane Kingston and space to open up. But John Connon was able to sit back as a sweeper, and it just made life easier at the back for us. So yeah, we haven't played as well, and obviously, as you said, like Cork had to be at their best, and they had to be at their best last Sunday. So there's a challenge for them to get back up to that level, and at the same time, they have to take huge confidence from, you know, as John said, like a performer in front of a full house in Croke Park and playing really well when, you know, they so look, you're not going to win on Sunday with a 5 or 6 out of 10 performance. It's going to have to be a lot better than that, and Clare are certainly going to have to be a lot better than they were against Kilkenny, you know, 2 weeks ago. So, but I still think it's a 50-50 game. I mean, there was nothing between them and Ennis. Like Jimmy Ryan got an unbelievable winner in Ennis last year. That was again, it was, you know, went down to the wire, and obviously Clare had a whole lot to spare, you know, in April as well. So I don't see it as being any different on Sunday.
Eddie, just on that, if you're to look at which of the two teams have more kind of scale or room for improvement, it's Clare, isn't it, that have maybe an extra 10 or 15% in the bank. It's just a matter of whether we see that 10 or 15%.
Yeah, that's I suppose the thing. We've seen Cork get so high twice, because that's the level you had to get to take Limerick. So you kind of go, well, can they? The other side of that, as you could say, is, hey, that's the level they're able to play at. So if they can play consistently to that level, they're going to be a handful for anyone. I suppose tactically they've shown, you know, how effective they can be, how smart they are when they dealt with Limerick on 2 different occasions, and still, you know, were able to make good innings into that Limerick outfit, which is no mean feat, to be fair to them. And you'd say, yeah, from Clare's perspective, you know, we spoke about the league final this year, and just the few little, I suppose, the valley periods that Clare seem to be encountering on a regular basis. But that's probably part and parcel of the game. Sometimes the opposition just get a stranglehold of a match, and you just have to hang in and you have to grind and probably hold on to, you know, like I said about that line from Tiger Woods, how good is your bad? So you just have to be able to maybe not hemorrhage too much during that period, because I think the one thing we all kind of look at, even from a coaching point of view, you go, oh God, we want perfection. We want consistency right through the match, which is very, very difficult to do. So you're kind of saying to the players, look, lads, accept that there's going to be periods of this match where they're going to find their mojo, they're going to find gaps, and then we just have to fix that. So there's somewhat a level of acceptance of that. But I do think Clare come into this, I suppose, you know, you look at both of them and you look at certain characteristics, resilience to keep coming back. Both have showed that over the last 5-6 seasons even. But particularly this season, I suppose Cork were on the brink. You know, we discussed that last week. But if you look at it now, I think there's probably a huge scope for Clare. And I think Clare, to me, remind me somewhat of 2013. Like I think they were the 5th favourite when they rolled in to play Galway and Thurles in the quarter final. And they just seemed to just let the handbrake off bit by bit. And particularly when they got to Croke Park then in that All-Ireland final, particularly the second day, they threw a tactical curveball. You know, we saw Shane O'Donnell introduced to the hurling world that day. So I think Clare probably are coming into this nice because they can now, All-Ireland finals, lads, are about just letting the handbrake off and going. There is no point in holding back. I know you want to defend well and you want to hold things, but I think if you go out kind of defensively minded, you have to attack everything. So from a Clare perspective now, I think this is a glorious opportunity for them to wheel in and just let fly, maybe throw a little tactical curveball at Cork and see how they deal with it, because Clare know what they're going to get off Cork. And the question is with Cork, like I said, there's that high level of performance that they're able to do if they can consistently hit that. And I think personally, if Cork get on their hands-on possession like they did against Limerick and they're able to dictate proceedings, it's going to be tricky for defence to hold them, because you know this Cork team have found a six forwards that give you a lot of headaches. And again, like I said there, the question for them and the challenge for them is, can they get up to that level? Because I think if I'm to give one kind of tip of the hat to Clare, I think they're a more dogged outfit. They're really able to dig in and go into the trenches, and that's where they will look at and say, we can outfight these lads in the scrappy ball.
Mull, you've always said that Cork are better when they have a point to prove and maybe a bit of a chip on their shoulder. They're going in as favourites now into the final, which is probably a different position. I'd say they've been favourites maybe in 3 games this year, maybe the Waterford game as well. They didn't deliver that day. Favourites against Dublin, favourite against Offaly. Didn't deliver much brilliance on those days, but got the job done. Were strong favourites against Tip and got the job done. But it's a different type of pressure coming into an All-Ireland final now. They maybe don't, I know it sounds a bit silly, but they don't have as much of a point to prove. They have a famine to end. But Clare are probably the ones with the point to prove. Like, how do you think Cork will deal with even the favourites tag going into the final?
Yeah, but even there's elements of, you know, the old saying, the carton is coming back, where confidence levels are at a sky high. You know, when Cork standard is up, you know, we've seen with Cork teams in the past, you know, that's when they hurl with a bit of exuberance and, leave off the shackles and, you know, they don't
unbeatable, yeah.
You know, they don't care who they're playing, and, you know, they go and kind of play that free flowing hurling. But I think it's going to be difficult to get back up to those levels, because those levels that they brought to the table against Limerick were extraordinary levels. And I think you even touched on it there. If they hit 90-95% of those levels on All-Ireland final day, which brings in a different type of pressure, it might be nearly good enough to get them over the line. Now, as I touched on Saturday, what they've had in their favour on the 3 occasions where they've played brilliant this year, against Limerick twice and against Tipperary, they've had nearly the bulk of the crowd. You can go back to that day down in Parky Queeve when they beat Limerick.
Yeah, significant.
I mean, it was nearly 3-1 that day. The day they played against Tipperary, I mean, it was nearly 10-1. The last day out, it was nearly 3-2. And we've even seen over the course of the weekend, having that extra support makes a massive difference. And we even seen it with Armagh the weekend, lads, where, you know, Armagh, you know, out-supported Kerry by 5-1, and, you know, when they got a bit of momentum behind them, you know, the crowd got behind them, and that brings energy. Now, look, I still think Cork will, you know, the demand that's down in Cork for tickets, I still think they'll have a bigger crowd than Clare, but they won't have anything to the numbers of what they had on the previous occasions when they played Limerick and played Tipperary. And to answer your question, Michael, you know, they are going in favourites. There's not a word about Clare. It's all Cork. Anyone I bump into, like, it's, you know, they're all talking about the famine. The 19-year famine is going to come to an end. And, you know, anyone I'm talking to, Jesus, they're only saying Clare or Cork by 5 or 6 points. And that's dangerous talk. And again, I think the Cork management have to guard their players from all that, and the focus for these Cork players this week is just getting a performance. If they perform, they're going to be extremely difficult to beat. And from a Clare point of view, I think that the main focus for Clare going into this All-Ireland is getting off to a good start. You know, we've seen on the 3 previous occasions where Clare have come to Croke Park, they've been slow out of the blocks, where they've underperformed in the first half. And I think that will be the focus for Brian Lohan, is saying, right, he'll be really homing in and saying, we need to get out of the blocks quickly. We need to get off to a good start. And if we're there at half time and we're going down the home straight, they might fancy it, you know.
Jamesie, that's a worry, isn't it? The last 4 times Clare have been to Croke Park, the 2018 All-Ireland semi-final against Galway and the last 3 All-Ireland semi-finals against Kilkenny, they haven't shown up really in the first half. And like, if that's the case on Sunday, I think they're going to have too much work to do. Like, if Cork get up ahead of steam and get a lead, I think they're going to be hard caught. Like, Clare are going to have to deliver, you know, a 73, 74 minute performance and probably save their best for the biggest day of the year.
Absolutely, and we were abject. I mean, how we were in the game at half time, you know, against Kilkenny 2 weeks ago was, I suppose, a good hats off to David Quilligan, because he kept us in it, and the levels were so disappointing that you know, given what had happened the previous 2 years, you know, you were saying, right, well, look at it. They'll surely bring everything they have and hit Kilkenny with everything they have early on, and it just didn't happen. But look, credit to them for the resilience they showed. But Brian afterwards, I'd say, was at a loss to explain it, because so many guys weren't performing. I mean, he said it himself. Sure, they could have taken 6 or 7 of the big names and the marquee guys off. So yeah, that has to be a worry. But I'm sure they've spoken about it and addressed it. And I mean, again, as the lad said, like, we've all been there when, you know, Rebels and the Cork crowd are getting into it, and you sense as a player, and we've all been there probably, that when that Cork tide gets rolling, and they're starting to flow, like, it can be unstoppable and intimidating, and Clare just have to make sure that they don't allow that to happen. So yeah, they have to start well. They have to make sure that, you know, they don't give the Cork crowd an opportunity to really get into it and get behind the team, and that's again something I'm sure that would have been addressed in the dressing room, you know, at some stage this week.
I'll stick with you, Jamesie, for a second. What area worries you from a Clare point of view? What areas do you think Cork can get joy? It's funny, you mentioned Conan earlier. The fact that Clare were able to play with an extra man, like, they will not have that luxury when they play a Cork this weekend. And I imagine Shane Barrett is going to try and take him on, maybe like he took Declan Hannon on at different stages the other day. Is that an area of worry, or what areas do you see potentially that Clare could be exploited in? I know you don't want to give away too many secrets or anything here either.
Connolly worries me, lads, right? I think Connolly is arguably the most dangerous forward in the game, because it's his mindset. Like, he's not thinking of tapping it over and playing outside you. He's looking to go at you, and he's thinking goal. And you know, when he first kind of came on the scene a couple of years ago, you know, you're wondering, does this guy understand maybe what it takes? Is he prepared to put the work in? You know, does he realise, like, what it's about? And I think, for whatever, you know, obviously the injury that maybe last year, but the penny has dropped him, and you know, even his work rate, you know, he looks like he's just matured and grown up, and you know, even that day in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, he batted one that was an inch over the bar that could have been the back of the net before half time. So he's priority number 1 in terms of the guy we have to stop. And I'm sure, look, this is a big question in the Clare management team, is who picks up who. So Adam Hogan, I'd imagine, I'd be putting Adam Hogan on Connolly anyway. But then, like, Conor Cleary probably matches up size-wise well with Brian Hayes. But then do you put Conor Lean, who's inexperienced in his first real season, on Hoggy? You know what I mean? The old dog. Like, Hogan has done well on Hoggy in the past. So that's really, for me, getting those matchups right in the full back line. I'm not worried about John Conan on Barrett. Now, Barrett's in the Hurler of the Year conversation. I even thought the last day, like, that it was only when Barrett was, it took him maybe 20 minutes to get into the game, but when he started to kind of get on the ball, I thought Cork started to move better. And but John stayed with him step for step, and ran all over Páirc Uí Chaoimh that day with him. And you know, John's in great shape, and you know, like, forget about his age, that's only a number. Conan is in unbelievable physical shape.
It's funny you say that, Jamesie. There's a narrative there that Barrett burned Conan that day, and I just didn't see it. He actually stayed with him the whole way on like a 70-80 yard run.
Yeah, there was a goal. Obviously, there was a goal chance, I think, early in the second half, when Barrett maybe just got inside him. But other than that, you go back and look at it. Conan was there for him step for step. Now, Clare obviously have options. I mean, in terms of, maybe Conan might match up better with Dalton. Maybe Dave McInerney, and Jim Ryan are both athletic. They're both quick. No questions about, their ability to match up with, say, with the runners. But again, it's something that again Brian will have looked at. I mean, like in the Munster final, Jim Ryan actually man-marked Cathal O'Neill. Now, Cathal O'Neill didn't do a whole lot, and he'd been brilliant for Limerick in the earlier games. But we maybe then didn't get maybe what we get from Jim Ryan going forward. So again, that's something that, and did John Conlon, Tom Morrissey didn't do a whole lot, but did John have any great impact either? So there's a lot to weigh up, and these are big decisions for the managements to make. And it's the same at the other end. I mean, like, what happens if Tony Kelly pitches up at centre forward? Is O'Donnell going to play at centre forward? Where does Rogers play? Because Rogers was brilliant at centre forward in Park and Keith. So, they're all guys that Cork need to try to get their matchups right on. So, a lot of thought, a lot of late nights, I'd imagine, for the management teams in terms of just trying to figure out the game plan and trying to anticipate, who will play where and who's going to pick up who. And as Eddie said earlier, like sometimes too, you throw a curveball and it creates major headaches and blows up the plans. So that makes it all the more interesting for me.
But isn't that a tough thing for management? Like, you're sitting down trying to anticipate everything and then make a decision and go, right, that's what we're going with. And just then obviously plan B, plan C, where do we go if this doesn't work? It's just such a difficult place to be, because you're trying to predict the lottery basically, and you're hoping that lads will fall in, like you plan and then it works well, it's brilliant, and then suddenly you're left scratching your head on the sideline. And it's even that, like the sideline side of it, that's so tough, like, because there's a chance that one or two of your players are going to just, maybe one anyway, might just completely bottom out on the day, and it just happens. And then it's just how quickly you can move on that. But I suppose it's considering all the information and then going, this is what we're going with. And then, that's tough on management, because you're saying to yourself, Jesus, did my decision impact on us down the line? And that's something that maybe we don't probably look at enough, because we always look at how the players perform. But decisions that the management make are just going to be detrimental. And it's the horrible side of it, is that when you come away from it defeated, you go back and you revisit those and you're going, oh shit, I should have done this or I should have done that. And sure, that's the beauty of it.
I think the big one. I think the big one in the context of this final is the call. Do you start Ryan Taylor or don't start Ryan Taylor? Because you're looking at Fitzgibbon, lads, the impact Fitzgibbon had in the semi-final for Cork against Limerick. When Fitzgibbon gets into his flow, Cork seem to tick when Fitzgibbon gets into his flow, and I think that's a big one for Brian Lohan. If Taylor doesn't start, who's going to pick up Fitzgibbon? Like, Tony likes to play his own game. He's not really a man marker. Will Colin Malone pick up Fitzgibbon? Will Colin Malone be able to stay with Fitzgibbon? Does he bring in his own nephew back into it, who might be given a designated man marking job on Fitzgibbon? Or does he start Taylor and say, right, we're going for it? As you said, Eddie, All Ireland finals are for going for it, and saying, right, you know what, we're just going to go for it, and we're going to throw Ryan Taylor in from the start.
What's your inkling on that, Jamesy? Because it's a difficult one. Taylor made such an impact in the last 20 minutes. If he starts, with due respect to Cathal Malone, I don't think Cathal Malone is that type of player where he's going to make that big impact, but he could, quench someone for an hour and get through a ball of work rate and maybe hit a point or two.
Malone is invaluable to them.
He is invaluable, but are they, Taylor can come in and make the impact where maybe Malone can't. Do you know what I mean? So you're trying to balance it out a bit and move the chess pieces around to make sure that you're going to get a hop off the bench when you need it. So what's your feeling on that, Jamesy? Ideally, you probably want two Ryan Taylors, really, don't you? You want one to start and one to come in.
Yeah, well, Malone definitely starts. I don't think there's any question about that. I mean, and like Malone is one of those guys that just look at. He's so honest. Even that hook on Shane O'Brien early on in the Munster final. He covered serious ground to get back there, deny a certain goal, and that's the type of thing that he does. He's just one of those guys that You know, does the heavy lifting. You know, he's so honest, he's so genuine. So he definitely starts. So for me, it's who's the +1 beside him. Now, David Reedy was really unlucky. You know, he made way for Tony in the Munster final, and was a guy that didn't start. But you know, Reedy, you know, again, like,
Excellent.
you know, he's just a handful, and he's one of those busy guys. And O'Donnell, he's the clubmate of O'Donnell's, and they've grown up together. And O'Donnell nearly plays better when Reedy's around. I think, you know, they kind of, he tends to find him. So for me, it's, yeah. Does he shuffle? Does he shuffle the deck a little bit? Does he shove Tony forward? Does he play Tony? I don't think he starts Taylor.
Would you start him, James?
John, if I thought it was a huge call the last day, because I thought, like, that when he didn't get any game time against Wexford, I thought, you know, we're unlikely to see him, because to throw him in to, you know, and hope then that he's just going to be able to get to the pitch again was a massive question mark for me. And I suppose, look at it, obviously he went as well as he did, and again, he's one of those guys that, you know, he's not a household name, and probably people were saying, oh, Clare talking about Ryan Taylor, and Ryan Taylor's a loss. I think the country saw how better the team functions when he made the team. It's just the little things he did. You know, he stitches the play together. He's able to break tackles. He's athletic. He's quick, and we play better with him on the field.
He executes all those little small passes very well. He's successful in all of those. He just had a brilliant link, man.
Yeah, and he turned the game, Eddie. Like, there's no question about it. He made a massive impact. But John, I don't know if there's 17 minutes in him. I prefer to have him on the pitch at the finish. And whether, you know, you look at bringing him on the second half, bringing him on with 30 minutes to go. But now knowing that, look at, yeah, he has half an hour in him, and that's obviously another card that Brian has to play that he didn't have down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. And the other side of Páirc Uí Chaoimh that night, like, so I got down there and looked over to see Tony Kelly in his civvies, you know, with the extended panel, thinking, Jesus, the task just got a lot harder. That we don't have him today, you know. So it's a big fillip to know that we've, you know, we're facing Cork again with hopefully now a fully fit and getting back close to his best form, Tony Kelly, and Ryan Taylor obviously as a serious option on the bench if he doesn't start.
But I suppose that's what's good about that, is that hurling has gone that way now. Before it was such a thing. Oh, I don't want to be taken off. But now your 5 subs coming in are massive, and I suppose players now and squads are at that level where they absolutely accept that my role is 50 minutes of hard graft. And like, if you think Colin Malone, what he brings, he's invaluable to that Clare team, a real silent hero of this Clare team. If he does 55 minutes of heavy lifting for you, and he tracks Darragh Fitzgibbon and frustrates him, well, Darragh Fitzgibbon now gets the headache of a really fresh Ryan Taylor. And if you go back to the 2 matches there, I think inside in Limerick the night that Clare beat Limerick, Ryan Taylor was central to that. He'd done so much work bringing ball out among the Limerick players. Was it 2 years ago down in Limerick? So he's invaluable. But what a fella you'd have to bring on and get a good 22, 23 minutes out of him, have him marauding through, you know, forcing Cork to chase him, or to just bringing fresh energy around the place, like when lads are starting to lag a little bit, because the game is high octane now.
But it goes back to that's why I think Brian Lohan and his management team will really home in on trying to get off the good start and having a really good first half, knowing that they have that backup of Ian Galvin, Shanahan, and Ryan Taylor to come in.
And what's also, sorry lads, last point, I think I was impressed. I know lads might say he didn't really play well, but I think Tony Kelly is a different Tony Kelly than he, you know, his game was always this popping up here, there, coming off shoulders, and he's still able to do that. But I think he done a lot more. He rolled up the sleeves last week against Kilkenny, and I thought he'd done a lot of unseen work. He was grafting, he was there, he was tagging lads. And I think that's something that maybe comes into it a little bit, is that, well, if Tony Kelly is going to be there, and what better lad, sometimes put your best lad on Fitzgibbon. Like, has Tony Kelly the wheels to follow Fitzgibbon around? I know you might say that sounds unusual because you want Kelly influencing the game. And also too, like, I just think if you wanted something a little left field, what if you turned around and whatever way you start, you set up, Tony Kelly pulls up beside Owen Downey at the throw-in and stays there for maybe a couple of minutes just to put Cork thinking. I'd be intrigued by some little thing like that. It just messes with the opposition's heads a little bit, because you might get your matchups, and Owen Downey comes out, he's looking around, where's O'Donnell or whoever it is. If he comes in here, I'm dealing with him. And next thing you have Tony Kelly beside you, and you kind of go, oh, I didn't really plan for this. Do you know, it sometimes can just alter a lad's thinking and stun him for 10 or 15 minutes.
But that could make all the difference, can't it? Like, you just taking someone out of your comfort zone. He could have planned for 3 fellas, and Kelly mightn't be one of them. You just, even if you're making your opponent think about something that's not the ball, that's to your advantage, isn't it? Really. You want to come in there, Jamesie?
Yeah, just on that, like, I mean, I think on that level, I think like Cork are more likely to line out the way they've played. You know, like Pat Ryan knows his team, he knows his 6 starting forwards, and obviously look at, they rotate and they move around. But we know that Barett is going to be centre forward. We know that Harry and Dalton are probably going to be on the wings, and Hoggy will be 15 and maybe in the edge of the square. But from a Clare perspective, there is Rogers can play inside, he can play centre forward. O'Donnell can play at wing, he can play at 14. Kelly could be midfield, he could be full forward, as Eddie said. So there is a bit more interchangeability probably, and probably Clare can pose a few more problems that way in terms of throwing the unexpected at Cork maybe than the other way around. They're
very adaptable, definitely. Yeah, like 3 or 4 different lads have started centre forward or played a full game centre forward, and that's a big position. Jamesy, just when we're chatting about Kelly, you obviously would have seen him at very close quarters in Flannan's. Like, he was in a boot, I'm sure, after Christmas whenever he came back into school or that. Like, it's been a long road back to this position, but I'd imagine if he had it in his head before Christmas when he got the ankle surgery, and same with Brian Lohan, this is exactly where they wanted to be back then. It seemed like a long way away, but he's got that bit of form now. He's got that little, I'm sure it wasn't a hoodoo in his head, but it was a hoodoo in maybe some other people's heads. He finished the game strong in Croke Park. They got a win in Croke Park, and you're thinking there's more improvement in him, and like there's a potential that he could catch fire on Sunday.
Well, hopefully, Michael. Yeah, I mean, I remember we were heading to a Harty match in early December, and he played. I think the first 2 rounds of the club championship, and then obviously he had a problem with the leg and head surgery. So I remember saying to him, "Look, do you feel rested? Do you feel you've had a break?" And he said, "I haven't picked up a hurley in 10 weeks." That was I'd say early December. But then he was back running and everything. Obviously, I think it might have been the week before Christmas. Clearly things weren't right. There was an issue there, and I think he saw the specialist and was on the operating table, I think, a day later. So I think there was always a sense that, the 21st of April was going to be, very tight. He was going to struggle to make it back. And I think he worked incredibly hard to put himself in a position where the management had a decision to make. Like, look at he's way ahead of schedule. He appears to be kind of flying. And obviously they threw him in against Limerick. But they didn't feel that he was right, and it was a huge call, like, with Cork a week later in a must-win game, to say, no, we're sitting you. We don't think you're right, and our physios don't think you're right. And I'd say even for Tony, he didn't start obviously against Waterford, didn't start against Tip. There was a level of frustration there because, like, we all want to play, lads. And you think you're right, and Brian Lohan is telling you, no, you're not fully right. So I think the fact that he's probably bullet for road, lads, and starting now to get the games obviously in his legs, and obviously another 2 weeks now training behind him. I think he has to be buzzing. And obviously look at the fact that the Clare lads in 2013 probably thought that we're going to have a lot more of these big days. And they didn't see Croke Park for 5 years, So I think there'll be a real, sense for O'Donnell and Kelly and the older lads that, look, we are now maybe into the twilight of our careers, and this is a glorious opportunity, and we can't let it pass us by. But Kelly, look, he's a match winner, lads, and if Tony Kelly is back to his best, Clare are a better team, and the Clare crowd are into it more, and he's obviously a guy that Cork have to account for.
It's funny, for all the talk about Clare not performing in Croke Park, O'Donnell, Kelly, Conan, McInerney and a few more, they're 1 for 1 in All-Ireland finals. They've delivered their best. They're 1-1, a win and a draw. They've delivered their best in All-Ireland finals 2 days. So they definitely have that under their belt, maybe over the likes of Harnedy, Horgan and a few more. And there was obviously a good few Cork lads in 2021.
TK won Hurler of the Year on the back of 2 All-Irelands.
Yeah, so that's an interesting one. Mullen, just going to throw it to you. It'd be unfair to ask Jamesie. Do you think Johnny Murphy's appointment as referee has much of an impact on the game. I feel Clare need to get very physical with Cork, need to kind of stifle that running game, need to get the hits in early, not allow them to build up a head of steam. How do you think the referee plays into maybe how the game will play out?
Yeah, a lot has been made of it. I suppose, look, even in the aftermath of the Limerick Cork game, I should have given Tyler Welch a mention.
Yeah.
Jesus, I mean, the refereeing performance. I'm not just saying it because he's from my own county. I've been banging the drum about Tyler, the last couple of years, and I think it's only a matter of time before Tyler and Sean Stack are going to do an All-Ireland final and numerous All-Ireland finals. And unfortunately, Tyler done the semi-final. Liam Gordon done the semi-final. And usually when you do the semi-final, you very rarely get the final. And I suppose Sean Stack's, I suppose the allegiance there with his dad being from Clare. So outside of those lads, there wasn't a whole lot more. Possibly maybe James Owens. But look, to be fair to Johnny Murphy, I think over the course of the last year or two, I think he has improved. And I think before he used to be kind of whistle happy. I think now, the last year or two, I think he realised he leaves the game be more freer. He's not whistle happy anymore. And look at it. That's All-Ireland final day is no different for a referee. It brings a different type of pressure. It probably brings a lot more pressure than players. You're under the microscope of the whole world is watching on. Everyone is watching on from within the stadium and watching on their TV screens, and that does bring a different type of pressure. But I think, to be fair to him, what I've seen of him today this year, I would be expecting that Johnny Murphy will do okay on the day,
Yeah, I believe Willie Barrett has worked very close with him in the last couple of years. The standard refereeing has definitely gone up a hell of a lot the last couple of years, and the last thing we want to be doing is talking about a referee on Monday morning or Sunday evening. So hopefully the game will flow and we'll finish with 30 lads on the pitch, all going well. Just a quick word on the two managers. Ned, I'd imagine the start of your Kilkenny career would have coincided with maybe the latter couple of years of Pat Ryan's Cork career. Like, there was questions about Cork maybe in previous years, lack of consistency, lack of steel, particularly at the back. They've been a very, very consistent force the last couple of years, and there was no questions about their steel the last day anyway, definitely.
Yeah, and in fairness to him, and look, it was something that I definitely raised the point. I think I recall distinctly after the second defeat when Clare beat them, said poor Pat Ryan must be feeling the heat because outside noise starts, and you had Ben O'Connor there going well with that Cork under-20s, and I said, God. And that was the reality of the situation.
Oh, Ned, if Cork hadn't got out of Munster, Pat Ryan would not be manager next year. That
was how close it was. So, and I'm sure Pat Ryan felt the heat as well. And then he just, look, what do? You just stick at it. You stick to the process. But I think what Pat Ryan has brought, and again, an All-Ireland medal winner himself.
He's going to miss the owl wave to the crowd at the weekend, 25 years. It's not a bad reason to be missing it for now, to be fair.
No, and Landers and Co, I'm sure, will bail it too. But look, he has experience in that regard. I think he has definitely faced adversity because no more than like it's been a tough gig. It's been a tough Ganzi to throw on is the Cork banished door bib. And because there's expectation and there's big expectation, and every year that it has gone on, because Cork see themselves, and they are, they have the All-Irelands are there. They just have dried up recently. But what he has done to make the point, I suppose, a little bit quicker is he has consolidated things. I think he has definitely brought a consistency probably to he has found his starting 15 now. And on that point of tactics, we said earlier, Cork aren't going to throw too many curveballs, if any, at Clare. They have their starting 15. He's going to back them. They've done it almost twice now against Limerick. So they're going to say, well, what are we looking at here, lads? We go do what we do. We back ourselves. They will do that. So he has probably stayed very calm and he has endured a lot of pressure. And I thought he has dealt with that really, really well. I've been nothing but impressed with how he has carried himself through that. And I thought his interview after the All-Ireland semi-final, he was straight away, game face was on. He needed to get these lads focused. And like I said here, he probably hasn't had a huge amount of sleep in the last week because he knows the razzmatazz that comes with it and trying to get that out of the way now and get the players completely focused on the task at hand. But he has done an excellent job in adversity, lads, because like you said there, that was very much on the horizon for him. You know, if Tipperary don't get that draw down in Walsh Park, then Pat Ryan was under massive heat. And here we are now, you know, he's a 50-50 chance of being an All-Ireland winning manager.
But I think he'll be more freer coming into this final than Brian Lohan off the back of, you know, getting those couple of lifelines. Like, let's be honest about it. If Waterford beat Tipperary that night, we're gone. We touched on the Limerick game. We touched on the draw up in Ennis. So when you get those lifelines, you're kind of saying, Jesus, when you're nearly preparing for, you know, going away on your summer holidays and nearly kind of, you know, passing the baton over to someone else to take over, all of a sudden then you're saying, geez, we're still in the championship. Whilst Lohan is probably coming into this final off the back of losing 3 months of finals, probably he's done an incredible job, probably going to feel the heat a bit more, saying, well, look, we have to go and win this final. But look, from a Clare point of view, I think, you know, they've lost the last 5 months of finals. And from a Clare point of view, they will be saying to themselves, you know, we've just got to get it right. They're going to come at some stage, they're going to get it right once in a final. And what's to say that it won't be this Sunday? And you'd even hear some of the Cork players, you know, are starting to mention that they want redemption for 13. Like, I'd nearly twist that the other way if I was in Clare and say, well, we need to remind some of these Clare players that in 17, 18, you got beaten in 2 of those months of finals by some of these Cork players. So I think they'll be weighing up the balance in regards to that. Like, you know, Brian Lohan will remind the Clare players of, remember 17, 18, likewise Pat Ryan, I'm no doubt will be reminding the Cork players of 13, you know.
Mull, just a quick word. No Waterford team involved, no Waterford Whistler involved, but the first ever outside kind of head coach in Cork hurling history is a Waterford man, and you know him well, Donald Duck O'Rourke. He's obviously had a big influence, and I know you'll be chatting him a bit up and down, but he's obviously had a massive influence. Like Pat Ryan, I think him and Pat Ryan became quite friendly when he was at the Sarsfields club for a few years, and it was a big call even from Pat to bring in an outside voice as well, and that seems to be paying off too.
Yeah, I'd be very, very good friends with Duck, and to be fair, in the lead up to matches, and you know, it's been quite difficult for Duck this year, and even, you know, I'd have no doubt that even, you know, when Cork were trying to get those couple of lifelines, it was at Waterford's expense. And Jesus, I'd say, you know, there's no bigger, prouder Waterford man than Duck O'Rourke from the Kappa Queen Club. And even, you know, he's gone the long way about it, actually. I remember he used to pick up the phone to me, and he became the Waterford Camogie manager, and I even said to him, Jesus, an no-brainer if you want to get yourself out there. And then he had he laid the foundation for Waterford Camogie. They're in a good state now. And then he went up and won an All-Ireland with Galway Camogie. He was down our club in De La Salle. I know Ian Flynn and the De La Salle management couldn't speak highly of him. You know, top class coach. Anytime he comes to the training field, there was something new every night. He's up with Michael Welch up in Dixborough. Michael Welch have great time for him, and I'm not surprised. I'm not one bit surprised of the influence and the impact he's had on Cork hurling. I suppose the disappointment thing, he went for the Waterford under-21 job 2 years ago, and I know he was a bit disappointed he didn't get the under-21 job, and that kind of opened the door for other counties to come and take him on board. And himself and Pat Ryan are the best of mates. I think he trained down in with Pat Ryan. I think he did a stint down in Cork Sarsfields. So yeah, look, Cork, they've gotten an excellent coach, deep thinker of the game, loves the game. And yeah, Jesus, I'll be honest with you, if Cork win the All-Ireland, I would be absolutely thrilled for Duck O'Rourke, because I know how much the game means to him. His life is hurling. And yeah, look, again, you know, my Clare allegiance, I've family are from Clare.
Go in now, boy.
So look, it's a tricky one for me. I'd love to see Duck win it. and the first side of it, you know. So I can't lose, really. I can't lose. But yeah, Jesus, I can only speak highly of Duck. He's been brilliant, you know.
Just a quick one, Jamesie, on Brian Lohan, and we'll move on to the key matchups then. Like, just talk to me about how he's united the whole thing within the county. Not just even the senior hurling team, but development squad wise, even at board level. Like, he's much more than a county manager by all accounts.
Well, I suppose look at it. He there's been a lot of change, I suppose, in you know, in Clare, I suppose, in terms of the way things have been ran and so on. And you know, Deirdre Murphy, who's I suppose you know, has replaced Pat Fitzgerald. You know, Brian would have known her and knew well. She's highly competent, you know, great girl, and doing a really, really good job. You know, but look at, yeah, there's a lot of things going right in Clare. I mean, look at, you know, we've got great people involved, the development squads. I mean, Don Maloney, for example, you know, had his hat obviously in the ring for the senior job, and Brian was got it. And what does he do? He goes back with the minors. You know, we've been in the last 3 All-Ireland minor semi-finals. Brian O'Connell, Bach, that I've heard with his manager of the minors, working with Donald. And there's just a lot of good work been done. But Lohan has just changed the mindset, even in terms of, we'll say, the whole financing, the fundraising, you know, wanting the best for the players, wanting to be able to maybe, you know, make sure that the supports that Limerick have, for example, that Kilkenny have, or that, you know, Galway or Dublin or Tip or whatever have, that the Clare players have access to those same probably things that maybe, you know, when you're looking for small percentages, maybe make the difference. So, and look at, he's an iconic personality, Michael, because of what he did. I mean, there was no one that was a bigger hero to the Clare crowd. I mean, Lohan could come out with a ball and the roof would come off the stand, you know, whether that was Nennis or Thurles or Croke Park or whatever, you know. So, you know, and even look at in our dressing room, I mean, he's revered, you know what I mean? He's still Lohan. And like all the 95 lads would go to war for that guy, you know what I mean? So, yeah, I mean, look at it, it's into his 5th year in the job, but like, if Brian Lohan wants to stay for another 5 years, there'll be nobody in Clare that will be, you know, will have any question marks about it. And he was questioned after the Munster final. I mean, there was lots of talk in the county that he was slow to make changes, and, you know, Paul Kinnerk was in John Kiley's ear, and, you know, who was Lohan listened and all the rest of it. But like, it's been noticeable, I suppose, you know, in the Wexford match and maybe in the Kilkenny match, that, you know, maybe he took some of that criticism on board, and maybe they sat down as a management team and spoke about it. And certainly, you know, they got all the calls right against Wexford. They got all the calls right the last day, and sometimes that's the case anyway when you win. But look at Lohan as a winner, and Lohan has, you know, to be able to go toe to toe with that Limerick team, Michael. And obviously, look at, you know, they should have won the Munster final last year. I mean, they had the chances to do it 2 years ago. I mean, again, it was, you know, I know John's final with Cork and was it 04 was unbelievable, but that game matched it. And he's been unlucky in the sense that, like, that he hasn't had access to silverware. The league maybe took a little bit of pressure off in that sense. But I said, Lohan is a player's man. He wants the best for his players. He wants these players to have the same chance that Lagnan ensured that we did, and he's certainly done. Clare hurling owes him a lot for the service he's given.
He's done a remarkable job, lads. Like, let's be honest about it. Like, you have to go back when Lohan first came into the job. He was picked, like Clare hurling was in an awful state, like, and he picked them up with a low ebb, and slowly, year by year by year, albeit, and it's a bit like McGeeney up in Armagh, possibly being unlucky in some finals, you know, probably should have had a couple of trophies under our belt. We're extremely unlucky in the Munster final last year. Even that epic game up in Thurles, the first year against Limerick, very, very unlucky. But one sure thing, he's brought the feel-good factor back to Clare hurling. I mean, the supporters, they're all back on side. I mean, the crowd that they brought to the All-Ireland semi-final, and there seems to be, you know, a togetherness there in Clare, and that has been off the back of what Lohan is doing at senior level, and they all seem to be steering in the one direction, and Lohan seems to be steering the ship. And I think even going forward for the next 4 to 5 years, regardless if Clare come up short or if they win the weekend, I think great credit has to go to Brian Lohan, because Clare hurling is in a fantastic state going forward for the next couple of years, and I think that's off the back of what Lohan has done the last 4 or 5 years, you know.
Yeah, well, he had to do a lot of heavy lifting when he went in there, and he started bit by bit. I'd say we will never know the amount of man hours that he put into that job in the first year from when he took that on. Like, I'd say the first 18 months, he was, he probably wasn't able to put everything into the hurling side of it because he was trying to sort out everything and secure things, get finances up and running and all that. And again, I would argue that is something he should not have had to do. I think, if your house is in order, the manager's job is solely focusing on preparing the team and getting them right. And fair play to him, you say he deserves incredible respect. But just on one thing, I would imagine, and again, you can make cases for both. And I marked him a few times now, and by God, he was one tough operator. He just did not go away. I would imagine that in a meeting context, right, if you sit down and Brian Lohan is giving these boys a little bit, not your All-Ireland dressing room speech. I'm talking about maybe tonight or tomorrow night or Sunday or yesterday if they were doing an out training day or something, that they might sit down after a bit of grub and have a meeting. And it's like, I suppose, it's a bit like a Braveheart speech to a degree before the battle. Like, I would imagine that if you're looking for, if the players are a little bit nervous or worried, and he comes in and talks, not mad talk, I just think what it means to him. If you stand in front of your players and you tell them, I suppose, Brian Lohan, I can picture him telling these lads about opportunity, pride in where they're from and all that, I would imagine that call to arms or that kind of sense of setting the tone 6 or 7 days out from an All-Ireland final, I would imagine that that's one big significant moment for this Clare team, because I think Clare, for me, in my experience, they thrive on that type of togetherness and that clannishness and that kind of, they haven't won a huge amount of All-Irelands, and I think that's the one thing, and I mean that in a respectful way. They will be looking at this, and I think Lohan will turn around and I say to him, look, he gave what he gave and he won what he won. So it's a real, this is our moment. And, you look at history, they haven't got to All-Irelands too often. So I would imagine that will be the sense of him, is that the boys are going to, we aren't going to be beaten, lads. We were going to go to war and we're going to give it absolutely everything. And I would imagine to be a fly on the wall. If those Clare players had any little niggling doubts or nervousness, I think, a talk from Brian Lohan would probably really give you a good confidence and instill, I suppose, that steel into you and make the hair stand on the back of your neck.
Last one, Jamesie, on Lohan. Were you ever the recipient of the Lohan stare?
I'll tell you one story, lads. Right, we played them in an under 21. He's a year older than me. We played them in an under 21 semi-final with Tone. Sorry, I think it might have been a semi-final. It could have been a quarter-final actually, and they'd have been kind of favourites to win. It was his last year or whatever. And I didn't know Brian Lohan. I didn't play minor with him. He went to UL. I was in Galway. We were on the, so look, at the bottom line was I gave a kind of a hand pass. We were down a point, whatever. I'd say with a minute left, and I went through the ball and slipped it to a fella, Phelan Collins, who was a really good player. As soon as he tapped it over the bar, about 21 yards out, and Phelan stuck in the top corner of the net, right, to win by 2, right. So that was grand. So about, I'd say, 2 months later, we were at Clare on 21 training, and I was walking down. We talked off in a row. We were walking down through a field to Flannan's, and I was walking down with Lohan. I didn't really know him, and he said to me, "Did you throw that ball?" This is about, I'd say, 2-3 months.
How dare you?
Right, and clearly it was still bothering me. But I didn't know Lohan from, I didn't really know him, and I said, no, look, it was a genuine hand pass. But about 5 years later, I remember thinking, Jesus, thank God I gave the right answer. You know what I mean? Because he doesn't forget. And look, I could tell 1,000 stories. I mean, he's one of those guys that you know Eddie, and you know Mull as well, like, that you go to war with, or go to war for. And look, and I think, and just on that, I mean, look at Clare in the Munster finals in 17-18, and Donal Maloney and Jerry O'Connor, gave everything, and but I think it was a lot of the external stuff, around the whole fundraising and the background stuff. We won't get into that or whatever. But I think the biggest thing you can say about Lohan is, like, the way that Tony Kelly has hurled under him, the way that Shane O'Donnell has hurled under him, he's got the best out of those guys, and that's it's a very united camp. It's a very, very happy camp. And look at Clare supporters. Every time they go to follow that team, they know that they're going to get 110%. We might not always win, but there's an honesty, and they know that. Like, no one worked harder when I was playing at Brian Lohan, and that's you'll hear the Clare players constantly referring to that it's hard work, and the Clare public know that those guys have worked very, very hard, and no stone has been left unturned. And win, lose or draw on Sunday, those guys will have given it everything, and you can't ask for any more than that.
Sorry, the last one. Look, Nan said in '97 that Lohan gave a speech at half time, and he basically had the toe of the hurl underneath some lads' chins at different stages, challenging him. Like, what was that like?
I mean, he was one of those guys that when Lohan spoke, like, you listened, I mean, and we had a dressing room where, Dalo was an unbelievable captain, and obviously we had a manager that was as charismatic as exists. I mean, and that's the other thing, like that, like, Lohan would be one of Loughnan's main lieutenants, and obviously look at, like, they would have a different relationship growing up in Shannon. Gerard obviously lived in Shannon. And Lohan would have been, a trusted lieutenant of his. And I remember Lohan telling me a story where Loughnane picked him up from college one day, whatever, thinking, and told him before Loughnane was ever manager that one day when he'd be manager, Lohan would be fullback and Seanie McMahon would be centre back. When Lohan didn't even know who Seanie McMahon was, So I'm sure at some point as well that maybe Brian has spoken to Ger and maybe drawn on some of that experience. But yeah, look at, we're just blessed to have him, and if willpower counts for anything, lads, then that gives us an extra maybe couple of percent in the locker.
Boys, I'll just get a quick matchup off each. What do you think will be a key matchup? I'll go to you first, Mull. What will be a key matchup that could decide the game?
I think Jamesie touched on it earlier. I just think John Conlon and Barett. That's the key one for me. If John Conlon can, curtail his influence, negate his influence, in any way, I think it will give Clare a great platform to push on and win the game.
Ned, we haven't talked much about the goalkeepers, and they're obviously not marking each other, but two keepers that maybe would have had question marks about them at different times and had pressure on them. Quilligan was obviously dropped for the first round of Munster last year, but Eibhear Quilligan and Patrick Collins had two big semi-finals, and they will both have a big bearing on the result on Sunday.
Absolutely. I think goalkeepers now are absolutely instrumental. We know that, and there's no point in kind of, going into that too much. They are absolutely crucial. They have to be able to spot where the gaps are. They have to be able to see where they're getting traction, where they're getting a foothold in the match, where they're making, I suppose, getting the ins. So that's the key to it, when to mix it up a little bit, what are the opposition doing. And then it's obviously the accuracy of them, because they have to be able to zing them. And I thought that was probably key to Cork taking out Limerick twice was Collins' distribution. And we saw what they like to do. So, and you can look at it again, O'Donnell, where does he go? I think we'll do Clare throw a tactical curveball at Cork, because Cork have their settled 15 now. But I suppose for me, my big area, and again, it's probably a line. It's the Cork full forward line and the Clare full back line. To me, that's where I suppose I think this All-Ireland would be won and lost, because Cork have got goals with Connolly and Hayes there and Horgan. Like, there's a nice blend to that line. I think Cork in both matches against Limerick could have arguably had two more goals in both those matches. Such are the chances they're creating. Hayes is one big, massive unit that likes to move, and he's a hard joke to stop. So I think getting those matchups right, and even just when they mentioned that earlier on, I hadn't thought about it too deeply, but Jesus, Adam Hogan to take Connolly and then put Cleary out in the corner on, I think that's a big decision, isn't it? And are you going to change your 2-3-4 to deal with the opposition? So to me, that is my key matchup, because there's, and we can look at lots of different ifs and buts out the field and who goes where. I think there's lots of them. There's, you can examine both teams. The goalies are obviously instrumental, but I do think, to me, this is where the All-Ireland, in my view, will be won and lost. Clare stop Cork scoring goals, they will go a long way to win this All-Ireland. If Cork get goals,
that's going to be difficult, Eddie. You even go back to the Kilkenny match, and with Clare pushing up, going mano.
They present opportunities.
The amount of space that was in front of that Kilkenny full forward line was nearly 35 yards of green grass in front of that Kilkenny forward line. If Clare give that amount of green grass to that Cork full forward line of Connolly, Horgan, Hayes, it could be a difficult afternoon, and that's going to be another question mark for Brian Lohan, is cutting off that space, when to push out and when to come back and close off that space.
Jamesie, I'd say
that's the way they play, John. Like he trusts his full back. I mean, and his full back line. Like, did you have to be able to man up and go man for man? I mean, none of this sweeper nonsense. You know what I mean? It's you man up and look at his faith in those guys. But I'm with Eddie. I think Connolly. I think we have to stop Connolly. And I think if there's one matchup, it's probably Adam Hogan on him, and maybe it'll be Conor Lean, or I don't know. That Hogan matches up with Hoggy. That's something that's worked well in the past. But for me, so Connolly is the one guy that Clare probably have to stop. I think he's just a real live threat. Just watch out for Mark Rogers, lads. Rogers is a match winner. He's probably underrated. I mean, we've seen what he can do, but he's a finisher. He's been relatively quiet, I'd say, in the last few games. I think there's a big game with Rogers, and Cork are going to have to account for him, because he has that touch of class, as that X factor, and he sees the path, he creates things. He's capable of producing these moments of magic, and that's why we have probably the creativity and the few guys up front, Don Link, Kelly in Rogers that are just capable of maybe unlocking defence that maybe other counties mightn't have, and that gives us a fighting chance.
I was just going to ask you, Jamesie, who was the maybe lesser heralded player that might light it up, but you've given me your defiant answer in Mark Rogers. Anyway, it's verdict time, lads. We've gone through it every which way. Mola, go to you first. Give me who's going to win and quickly why. Now, not a 5 minutes kind of soliloquy here. Give me a quick sentence for who's going to win and why.
It's extremely difficult to call. I just think it's very much possibly 55-45 in Cork's favour. I'm just going to lean, James won't like me for this, I'm going to lean towards Cork. Just think the stars may be aligned with the couple of opportunities that they've gotten this year in their season surviving. And I just feel if they get into their flow, if they can find any form of the levels that they've found against Limerick, I think they're going to be very difficult to beat. I'm just going to lean towards Cork.
Ned?
Yeah, I kind of agree with what Muller is saying, and my head keeps telling me it's Cork, because and I think they're on the brink of, if they open up here and do secure Liam McCarthy, and you'd say, look, has the stars aligned for them a little bit, but something in me is saying that Clare are coming, and I think it's a small bit like they were in 13. They really came in under the radar. And then, and I just have a funny feeling that if they get momentum, I don't know. I just think there's Cork play that lovely expansive game. They have their mojo, and they're brilliant, and they're relentless in that. And I think they are a common team. But I just think that there's a couple of guys in that Clare dressing room that probably have suffered over the last few years, no more than some of the Cork lads too. But I think there's a few lads there, and this is Rocky Balboa and the lads. This is it for us, lads. Our county don't get so much All-Irelands. This is our time. And I just think that little bit of growl, and I think a little bit of luck, you need a little bit of luck in All-Ireland finally. I find it very, very hard, Mick. I'm sorry now I'm rambling on. Very hard to separate them. I just have a little inkling for Clare.
You're going with your gut, as am I. I think Clare just have more room for improvement going into the final. I don't know if Cork are going to be able to hit the levels they hit in the semi-final or the day down in the park. If you're looking at two teams, what's a better way to get to a final? I'd say Clare not falling into a final, but not delivering your best and still finding a way and knowing there's loads more in the locker. To me, that's a better way to go into the final. Then it's the hype machine that's around Cork as well. I think Clare coming into it lovely. I do think there's a bang of 2013 off it, and I think Clare might just edge it. Jamesy, need I ask? Need I ask what your verdict is?
Well, I'd give Clare the kiss of death if I tipped them. I actually tipped them to beat Limerick in the Munster final, and that didn't end well. So, listen, sure. Head says that look at Cork are absolutely entitled to be favourites. Given what they've done against Limerick, given the level they've got to, given the curve certainly seems to be upwards in terms of the trajectory that they're on. But look, I give us a great chance. I think if we turn up and if our big guns perform, and if we can put the shackles on Connolly to the other end, I give us a great chance. But I think Cork are favourites, and I think deservedly so. And Cork all the way. That.
Come on, Jamesie, that's the job. The old reverse psychology job. Oh, stop. Yeah. No, that's great stuff, lads. That's it for
before you go, give me a man of the match Sunday. I want a man of the match of each fellow. Who's going to be the match winner? Start with you, Wade.
I'll go with Tony Kelly.
Go on, Jamesy.
Shane O'Donnell, lads. Pearl of the year.
Mull.
I'm going to go with Conley.
I'm going to go with Peter Duggan. Was unbelievable today against Cork down the park, and I think if he performs, I think Clare could win. Good man, Mull. Fair play. You threw in a curveball to finish it off. Fair play to you. Most of those players are available at good odds also. But that's it for another packed show this week. My thanks to Eddie Brennan and John Mullane and our special guest Jamesie O'Connor for joining me. We'll be back next Monday to review the All-Ireland final and see where Lee McCarthy will be residing for the next 12 months. In the meantime, don't forget to rate, review and follow the show on Apple, Spotify or wherever you get your podcast from. Thanks a million for listening and goodbye.